Welcome to midlife, y'all. We are back and we are searching for meaning in the middle. And I am very excited to be joined today by our guest, Arielle. I'm saying it right. Arielle Zadok.
Arielle Zadok, yes.
Zadok. Thank you. Okay. So she is a board certified sexologist, intimacy coordinator, consent director, holistic health coach, and producer. We met at the LA Vertical Drama Market and she had me at her podcast it's a video podcast around what is it? Birds and bees don't fuck.
Birds and bees don't fuck. You got it right, because that's right. Birds and bees don't fuck, even though we were all taught about, quote, the birds and the bees. What?
Yes. So I loved that because then we got into this really interesting conversation about sex ed and what you learned about sex ed. And I shared that I grew up in the Middle East. And so there was no sex ed. And so, like, one summer when my sister and I were home from living in the Middle East, we are from Montana, always kept our house. So we were able to come home in the summers. And my mother marched us down to the middle school to watch these like very, generic for the time in the late 70s, early 80s. Actually, probably this was early 80s. Sex ed films. And I remember my sister was old enough to be too cool for it, but I was young enough to be really curious. But that also explains our personalities.
Yes, yes. I love that.
So I didn't learn a lot, but I remember that very vividly because I was like, oh, she's too cool for this. I want to know. Like, I wanted to know what's what. So I want to hear, first of all, what inspired you to launch and host your show, but also just really be all in on conversations around sex education, and sexual awareness.
I love that you pose the question that way. So I'm going to kind of start with the second half of the question, because something that people who work in sex and sexuality understand, but outside of this don't understand, is that there is a coming out with this. Like, it is, some people start when they're like in their, teens, and they're doing school programs and things like that. So some people, it's just inherently always what they've done. But for the rest of us, especially if we've started later in life, if we've started, for me, I didn't start being open about working on sex and sexuality until I think it was in my mid 30s, I want to say, something
Okay.
like that. So, for the rest of us who didn't really start being open about working in sex and sexuality until we had full careers elsewhere, there's absolutely a coming out, because there is stigma, there is shame. There are for sure jobs that I have not gotten because I talk about sex and sexuality, which is totally fine. That just tells me that those are not the
Wow.
jobs for me, right? Like, I mean, I can only assume. I don't have facts on this, but I can assume that there are
I
people.
trust. Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely,
You know what you're doing.
I trust. Listen, I work in sex, I understand shame. So, that and people being afraid to come into these spaces. So,
Right.
I think it's really interesting for us to even just talk about that, because there is this coming out, and it is a decision. There is a very intentional decision that people who choose this path have to take in telling their families, in telling their partners if they have them, in telling their kids, in telling their colleagues if they're still in corporate America, which most people do start, double tasking things. For me, it's a little bit different. I've always been a freelancer in production. So there is no corporate America for me. Although when I started being more open about working in sex and sexuality, I was working at Disney. But that, I was in health and safety, so I wasn't
Okay.
super worried about that. There's kind of a little bit of a tie in there. So, for me, this entire path really started. I production is the love of my life. I am first and foremost always going to be a
Yes.
producer. It's who I am. I have tried to escape that identity, and it doesn't work.
You are a natural producer. I get that vibe from you. I love it.
Yeah, yeah. Some people are just built for chaos and organization. So, and
Right?
making dreams come true. That's it. So that is inherently who I am. And so behind the scenes, I was also being certified as a holistic health coach. I did that in 2014 is when I started on that path. And that
Nice.
was because of my own healing process. And it was linked to my reproductive organs. I was getting UTIs
Wow.
and yeast infections like nobody's business. And meanwhile, so do so many other vulva owners.
Right.
So my entire journey in holistic health really started from the place of, well, I'm getting UTIs all the time. Since I was 16, I'm getting yeast infections all the time. Like, this cannot possibly be normal, but no one really talked me through that. It wasn't until I got a Mayan massage, and I couldn't actually get, I wanted to get they do like this uterus massage. I had an IUD
Ooh,
in at the time, so I could only do like my stomach and my guts, which had their own problems. But it was sitting with that health coach that she was like, "Well, can we do a health assessment?" I said, "Yeah, absolutely." And that's where all of these things came out. That's how I got switched on to health coaching. And it was actually somebody who was just on my podcast. Shout out to Nicole Jardum. She worked with me in production, and I watched her journey into holistic health. She is a women's hormonal a holistic health coach. She has done extraordinary work in periods, in menopause, in perimenopause, in all sorts of things that happen for those of us who with uteruses. She's incredible. So highly recommend. But that's really where my journey started. And it wasn't
yeah.
until 2020 that I was starting to make sex ed videos and talk about education more and talk about sexuality a little bit more openly and more professionally, other than like, casual conversations.
Right.
I've been listening to sex ed shows and watching this stuff since I was like 8 years old. I was like hiding under the covers, listening to Dr. Ruth and Dr. Drew because
My
he took
God,
over.
Dr. Ruth, I loved
Yes.
her.
Yes. Yes, exactly. So little did I realize I was actually listening to reruns because she was off air by the time I was old enough to start listening, but I was still way too young to start listening. But, curiosity is the thing that drives most of us into this,
Yes.
the curiosity of the human body, the human condition, intimacy, connection. For me, when I remember the thoughts when I was really young, it was not necessarily about the act of sex and sexuality, but for me, I was like, because I would watch real sex too. I'm like, look at all the different things that adults do. Look at all the
Right.
different ways that they connect. This is so interesting. And I loved, this sounds terrible. I loved hearing people's problems. I found it fascinating for people to call in and be like, my girlfriend, my boyfriend, and I would hear like gay stories and queer stories and, threesomes. And that, like, I was hearing everything. And this was the soundtrack of my life. And so it was just kind of always a natural inclination that eventually has just manifested into whatever the fuck I do now.
I love that, and I love that you tie it back to such an early age. I was my mom's marriage counselor starting at 12, so I've had a lifelong study of relationships, so I really get that, like, the fascination starts really young,
Yeah.
and I mean, like, please, my Barbie and Kens were having affairs before, like, my mom ever came to me for marriage counseling, so I was
Yes.
always
Yes.
fascinated with the study of relationships, so I love meeting people who early on really connected to those parts of themselves and were like, "No, this is something that will probably inform where my career goes. It informs where my life goes. So, what kinds of conversations and guests have you talked to over the years that really stand out to you in terms of like, these are the kinds of conversations that you crave and that the world needs?
Very particular about who I have on my show. So it is very strictly sexperts. So if you work in sex and sexuality, that includes
Okay.
sex workers, that includes educators, coaches, therapists. If you work in sex and sexuality, you're in. That's one guest. The other guests are comedians because comedians, first of all, I do comedy. I do kids improv. So I like do sex stuff and then kids improv. Make it make sense. But it's,
Love that.
but comedy is a reflection. I mean, all media is a reflection of our culture, but I think comedians more than ever are really like they are quite literally their job is to observe and reflect back and make it relatable and make it funny.
Right.
So, um comedians are just and I just love comedy. I've worked in comedy in one form or another for the majority of my adult life. So,
Okay.
it's something that I've just always been around. I again, it's kids comedy. It's very different than stand up, but it's still within the comedy field. And so I wanted to create something that was not a sex ed podcast. I did not want to create a lecture. I did not want to create a marketing tool. I did not want to create something that was for the purpose of people selling their shit. In fact, when
Yes.
people approach me, 9.9 times out of 10, I say, no, thank you. Because if you're
Yes.
approaching me, then you are selling something and you are marketing yourself. And
Exactly.
that is amazing. And you need to do that. And it's an extraordinary tool. And I should probably do that more. But for me and my show, I approach it like a showrunner, not a coach or an educator that has a podcaster. I am a producer. I am producing a show that needs to be conversational. And at some point, I'm always going to ask somebody, where did you grow up? what do you remember about sex ed? Because that is the thing that ties all of us together. But I truly do
Yes.
not know where our conversations are going to go. With the comedians, especially, they might be kinky and I don't know it. They might be polyamorous and I don't know it. They might have grown up in a cult and I didn't know it. That's how I am learning about my friends, to be honest with you. But
It's
um,
cool.
it is really fun. So I'm really focused on, let's see what comes up. Let's just have these natural conversations. I do not prep questions. I do not prep the people coming on the show. I really want to be speaking to the person, not their profession. While I'm
Yes.
focused on their professions and like, these are the two people who come on the show, and that is a creative choice for sure. I am not going to be talking about your job. There will be times that we do talk about their jobs if it comes up naturally and it makes sense and there's a good flow to it. Like, of course, I have DOMs that are, this week is Mistress Justine Cross. We obviously talk a lot about DOMs and subs and what she does because it's really important and it's also a
Sure.
topic that people are really interested in. But it's just not always going to play out that way. So it's really about being
Love
present.
how you approach it like a showrunner. That's what I do here on this podcast too. There's no selling. Like I was
Yeah.
very clear about that. And to your point, when people come on, they're like, I have this book or I have this thing. I'm like, that's great, but that's not what we're going to talk about. So if you're cool
Yeah.
with not promoting what you want to promote, we can have a conversation. And we can
Literally that.
certainly weave in, but like it needs to feel authentic. It needs to feel like a conversation. It needs to feel like we're getting to know someone rather than
Yeah.
like, oh, great, I'm being marketed to again.
Yeah, and I really didn't wanna create something that was, like, lecture-y, like, "Oh, here
Yes.
this show is gonna be about 3 things you can do when you can't come." Like, no, you're gonna learn that through conversations. The
Yes.
information is gonna get seeped into you sneakily.
Ooh, I love that. Okay,
Yeah,
well,
yeah.
speaking of coming, you say that, people having the best sex aren't just lucky, that
Mhm.
they have language and safety and curiosity and a process.
Yeah,
So, for women in midlife specifically, because this is a show about midlife and there's a lot of stuff that comes unglued,
so
undone,
much.
there's a reckoning. Um, for women who never got a roadmap to, like, having the best sex possible, um, where do we even begin?
Yeah, you have to begin with yourself. If
Okay.
you don't know how to pleasure yourself, if you don't know what sensations you like, if you don't know how to set the stage for arousal with yourself, if you don't know what
Yes.
there are two things. There's your accelerators and your brakes. Your accelerators are the things that will help you ramp up, that will turn you on, that will create the space, that will allow that pleasure to flow, that will allow the turn on to come, that will allow arousal to exist. The brakes are all the things that stop that. The
Okay.
messages in your head, the dishes in the sink, the smell of your partner's breath, the weird clothes you're wearing, the shitty email that you just got,
The
whatever those
phone next to
are,
the bed that's on.
all of it, right? Like it
Yeah.
can show up in any which way. The
Yeah.
photo of your grandmother in your bedroom. What are we doing? Get her out of there. She doesn't
Yes.
belong there. So it's all of these things that we need to look at together. And if you don't understand that about yourself, you cannot communicate that to a partner. So before you even know what types of touch you like, what sensations you want to play with, what physical activities you enjoy, and where on the body you enjoy them, you have to first understand what is going to push the gas and what's going to pump those brakes. Because those two
Okay.
things, you're in a car, you cannot do both at once. The
Right.
car's not going anywhere. So you really have to understand those things about yourself, and then we can step into, okay, now we know how to set the stage and how to avoid getting turned off and getting shut down. Now we can start to explore, well, what do I like? Now that I feel safe enough
Yes.
to explore it, and now that I'm in a place to like be turned on and I'm not shutting down and I'm not pumping those brakes, what do I actually like? Do I like hard touch, soft touch, slow touch, fast touch, squeezes, grinds?
All
Like
of the
what?
above?
All of it, like all of the above. Yeah.
Yeah.
And listen, I have a lot of tools for this. I did create a program and a roadmap called Fuck Like the Movies that took, again,
Which I
producer
love.
first,
When I
right?
saw that, I was like, "This
Yeah.
girl knows what she's doing."
Yeah, I mean, listen, you can't take the producer out of the girl. So I just kind of was like, I took everything that I had between holistic health coaching and sex education and coaching and everything I know about production and specifically also producing intimacy scenes. And I was like, well,
Yes.
why don't we approach sex like this? Like everyone's trying to like give a tip and give this and give that, but it's like, okay, but we're not talking about consent. We're not talking about arousal and breaks and we're not talking about communication. Like you need all it's not one thing. It is all of these things and I know that that can sound daunting, but it's the fucking truth. You can't shoot a movie by just, or not a good movie anyway, just by picking up a phone and hoping for the best. Like that's not how these things work. That's not how creation works.
Right.
Sex is creation.
And I love that you're not just talking about, okay, I know how to have an orgasm, but you're talking about setting the scene for pleasure. Like you're talking
Yes.
about, like, I love that you talk about distractions or things that don't necessarily belong in a space that you want to feel turned on.
Mhm.
So much more goes into it. And, I've been with my husband 21 years and we joke that like he's the woman and I'm the man. Cause like I used to be so wham bam, thank you, ma'am, and he's like a
Yeah,
Latin
yeah.
lover, likes to take his time, and, like, it's taken me a minute to learn to slow down and savor, and, like, we joke about it now, I'm like, "Wow, I really had no idea what my own." I it just was so disconnected from pleasure other than end destination at the
Yes.
beginning of our relationship, and I'm so grateful for the journey this relationship has taken me on because it's unfolded and there's been so much self-discovery as well as partner discovery. So, I love that you're speaking to, again, not just orgasm, but, like, touch and setting a scene and thinking about how you want it to look, feel, all of it. It does feel like a movie because it's not any one note. You're hitting a lot of different places.
Yeah.
So, another thing that happens for women in midlife, and I'm a fan of this, I also think it can be a cautionary tale. We have 0 fucks left to give, and that's great.
Yeah.
There
Yeah.
is some emotional shrapnel from 0 fucks left.
Yeah. Agreed.
Um
Agreed.
But what I think is so important for women who have been people pleasers their whole life, and so they've been like, "This is what makes other people happy." They may not
Mhm.
know what turns them on, and so you've kind of touched on setting a scene, but how do we start separating our true desires from performative actions?
Yeah, I got tools for that
Okay.
too. So, the foundation of everything starts with your nervous system. Our
Okay,
bodies
yes, oof.
are always talking to us. Always, always, always talking to us. Whether or not we are engaged in that conversation is another story. So, when we are people pleasing, when we are coming from a place of performative sex or performative literally anything, you have to tap into your nervous system. You have to tap
Mm,
into your body to see, am I am I removing eye contact? Is my breath slowing down or speeding up? Am I holding my breath? Am I feeling tension somewhere? Am I speaking to myself in a way that's convincing myself to do something? All of these messages are coming to us at all times. But to your point of moving quickly, when we're moving so quickly, we don't have time to think or see or feel those things, which is why in intimacy
right.
coordinating, a big part of that job is removing the urgency from a situation. Because when we can remove that sense of urgency, we can actually figure out what's going on. And
Okay.
there's no, you can move quickly and you can move efficiently, but we don't want to be moving urgently because the urgency is what blocks all of those messages. And people pleasing is a way that we are moving with urgency. So you have to remind yourself,
Yes.
slow the fuck down for a second. Whoever this is, whatever this is, it's like driving a classic car. They can wait. If I stall out, if I'm confused, if my girl does not want to start, y'all can wait because this needs to be taken care of and I have to take care of her right now. And when
Yes.
she's ready to move and when I figure this out is when we're going to figure this out. But I don't need to worry about all these honking horns around me. That's not going to solve anything. That's not going to support anything. That's only going to be dangerous. So I need to focus on the present moment, figure out what's going on, and then I can move on my way. They'll be fine. And that's
I like
which
that.
people claim
And
to do.
so if we put this in a situation like on a film set and you're doing intimacy coordination,
Mhm.
what would that look like in that moment?
So it can look like a lot of different things. Intimacy coordinators need to be really tapped into energy. All of us are
Yes.
energetic, the good ones anyway. If you're not good at that, you're
Yeah.
not going to last long. So part of my job is sensing the energy in the room. And if I'm sensing that the energy in the room is extremely escalated and that everyone's tensions are getting high, I will tap the first AD and say, "Hey, we need everything is getting really intense right now. Let's just pause the work and take a breath."
Okay.
And let me tell you, and I do this as a first AD as well. So before I was in
Yeah. So you know.
yeah, and so I know. Before I was an intimacy coordinator, I was a first AD and a producer. I parallel path
Okay.
both of those things, and I love doing those jobs. Um, and so as a first AD, I would do this too. And and this comes from my holistic health coaching and yoga. If I can sense that that energy in the room is a little too high and people are moving a little bit too quickly in a way that's not actually serving themselves or the production, I'm going to say, "Hey, let's hold the work for a second. We're going to settle the room. Let's take a
Yes.
breath. We can wait until like, fine, let's get the room set. I'm okay with that. Like there's a time and a place. Like this is something that new intimacy coordinators, if they're not super experienced on set, this is something that a lot of them like need to, this is a skill that takes a long time to learn. But I can sense when it's a good time to pause and when I'm just going to be disruptive. So you cannot be
Yes.
disruptive when you do that. That is a problem. We don't want
Yes.
to do that. But we can find a beat and I can go to the first AD and say, "Hey, let's get this room set up. We'll get everybody out of here. Before we go, we need to stop and take a few breaths because we need to settle the energy in the room and then we can move forward. So can I have those few moments?" Yeah,
I
absolutely, no
love
problem.
that. I love
Yep.
that. So in corporate I was a communications person. So like reading the room is everything, and I
Yeah.
love that. It's such an innate skill, and I'm grateful for that. And so my thought is in this moment for women who are learning self-pleasure to start with, reading the room about your own comfort level and not trying to force
Yes.
self-discovery, but really tuning in when it's the right time, when it's a safe time, when you feel comfortable. I think giving yourself that permission to read yourself. And for a lot of people pleasers, we haven't done that. So
Yeah.
really taking the time and midlife is such a time where our intuition really locks into our wisdom. And so I really invite people to take those opportunities to slow down, tune in, and trust what's happening. Those messages are never wrong. And I love that's one of my favorite things about midlife is like those messages just come through really innately if we listen to them.
Yeah, it's if we listen to them, we can get in our heads so easily. And to your
Yeah.
point of self-pleasure, remember that you don't actually have to touch yourself in your own in a self-pleasure session. Set the scene, set the
Okay.
room, set the lights, set the music, put on something sexy, whatever makes you feel good. Set the tone for the scene that you want to create and do not get there and then go straight to, "I have to have an orgasm." That is not the point. If you are doing all of this work just to have an orgasm, you are missing the point. The point is pleasure. Orgasm is a
Oh,
result of pleasure. Orgasm
I
is
love
not a goal.
that.
It is not a thing that you can attain. Orgasm is quite literally just a reaction of specific stimulation. Not all orgasms feel good. Squirting doesn't always
Okay.
feel good. These things don't always feel good. It is quite literally your body reacting to stimulus. So when we are just focusing on an orgasm, it does not mean that we are experiencing pleasure. Those two things are
Right.
actually separate. So we really need to focus on that understanding because the culturally everything is about orgasm. Everything is about the clit. It is not about finding the clit. It is not about having an orgasm. It is about understanding what feels good to your body and how to expand on that pleasure. And when you do that,
Mm,
that's where an orgasm may or may not come. And guess what?
sure.
Some of the best sex you will ever have in your life will not conclude with an orgasm. It will conclude because it feels like it has come to a natural conclusion. And that goes for people who have vulvas and people who have penises. It does not matter what your body parts are. But when you focus on pleasure, you're going to have a good time.
Yes. Oh, I love this. You're describing my sexual renaissance right now with my husband.
Yes.
Because midlife changes things, and it's like we're on such journeys together, and it doesn't matter what the destination is, and that is, like, revelatory for me specifically. I love it.
Yeah. And both of your
Yeah.
bodies are changing. It's not just one person's body changing. Obviously,
No.
if you have a uterus, because some people get their uteruses removed earlier in the midlife and go through perimenopause and menopause earlier in life. But if you are in midlife and you have your uterus and you're going through all of these hormonal changes at that time, you're not the only one. They're going through changes as well. Ours is more violent. Ours is way more dramatic, but
Is
their
it?
bodies,
Yeah.
I know, but their bodies also do not function in the
They
same way,
do.
you know?
And we
So
need to honor that. I think
yeah,
that it's sometimes difficult. So I'm so glad that women are in a space where we are talking about this more. And I think we're talking about it more because number one, I'm there. And so, of course, my conversations talk about it more. But I think culturally, we're talking about it more. There's more people out in the world talking about menopause, perimenopause. And I still feel like there isn't enough conversation for men about midlife in terms of um, health, sexual awareness, navigating conversations with your partner so you can feel comfortable and safe having conversations about your shifting libido, the changes that you're experiencing, both as men and as women, or whatever, whoever your partner is. So I think finding safe spaces and not having them in the bedroom necessarily, finding ways to have the conversations in other rooms, so it's not just when we get to like, "Oh, wait, I probably should tell you this before,"
yeah,
like, really finding ways to just bring this into natural conversation.
you are tapping right into it, and you are 1,000% correct. The bedroom is not the place to have a conversation about your sex. Before sex
Yeah.
is not the time to have a conversation about your sex. Immediately following sex is not the time to have a conversation about your sex. You can have specific conversations about the sex you're about to have, you are having, or you just had. That is one specific type of conversation. But these overall conversations, I call them intimacy meetings. Because
Ooh,
again,
I love
well,
that.
well, because again, like my whole program is all like take because I wanted to make it fun and also for the producer
Yes.
brain. So I call these intimacy meetings. And so you have to have regular intimacy meetings because that's what sets things up and it creates safety in your nervous system to have these conversations because
Oh.
now we're not just getting together to have these conversations about what's going wrong, but we have structure for talking about what's going well. So we can talk about what's going well, what's not going well, maybe things where you weren't fully showing up in the way that you wanted to, or maybe some areas where you weren't fully feeling seen in the way that you wanted to, or whatever those things are. But we're also celebrating. It is so important that in these conversations, we are talking about what goes well and what has improved since the last conversation that we had about X, Y, and
Ooh,
Z. So we're
okay.
really, again, creating regular conversations so that there's not a we need to talk. Like, no, we're always talking. We're
We're
always talking.
always talking.
We are always
Yes.
talking, but these are very focused conversations. And they're not on maybe you have sex later in the day, but they're not the same as, your intimacy dates. I do not call them like I am very anti-scheduling sex. I am very pro scheduling intimacy. So I don't really
Ooh,
think that your
love
intimacy
this.
meetings should be on the same day as your scheduled intimacy because, those conversations can be heavy. Um, so I would not take over one of your intimacy days to do that. I would suggest doing those on different days so that the intimacy days can still feel light and fun. Um, if that is something that does feel light and fun for you and you want to couple it, that's totally, everything is about co creation, but I would not start from that place. I would start by keeping those as two different intentional spaces of time. But in your
It's
intimacy
great
meeting,
advice. I
yeah.
also love that you keep bringing up the nervous system because in
Mhm.
midlife, with our shifting hormones, our nervous system can feel like a radically different space than it's been in the past. Show
Yeah.
of hands, yes. So,
Yep.
finding ways to regulate the nervous system in midlife is a balancing act, and it does impact how we feel about our bodies, how we feel about
Yeah.
sex, how we feel about pleasure, because there's so much stuff happening hormonally. So keeping in mind that nervous system is a priority and finding your own practices with that are so essential to navigating midlife.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's why my program, like the structure literally starts with consent in your nervous system. Like these are the
Oh.
foundations. We can't go anywhere else. If like before we even talk about communication, we're talking about the nervous system and like you can't have a conversation if you're already activated. So if we're not understanding the activation aspect of things and what's going on in your body and we don't have the tools to center ourselves and ground ourselves going into conversations, then the communication piece doesn't mean shit. And if you can't communicate, then the setting the scene doesn't matter or creating your erotic persona doesn't matter. Like none of those things like they're the reason that I've structured things the way that I have is because one thing has to build on the other because if you don't have the core concepts of not people pleasing, of nervous system safety, of consent and what that looks like in a long-term relationship, then,
Yes.
you can't have the communication, you can't have the co-creation. A yes, no, maybe list doesn't matter if you are already activated and you don't understand that by your partner touching your lower back, your body is already shut down because you don't like the sex that you're having or whatever, or because you're holding on to something. Like if you don't understand that first step and that you, as the person doing the touch, if you don't even understand that you might be shutting down your partner before anything even happens just because you're touching them in a way that they don't like to be touched, but they can't speak to it, but their body's speaking to them, like all of these things are happening. We have to understand what the fuck is happening before we try to move any steps further. So
So much
it
of
is
this is nonverbal, and
yes, yes.
yeah, there's so many cues we could miss if we're not paying attention or
Mhm.
misconstrue.
Yeah,
Finding our voice is so important. If we haven't found it by midlife, now is a beautiful time to find it because, another day not speaking your truth is just a disservice to yourself and everyone around you. Woo.
absolutely. Yeah, big time.
Yeah. Um, do you find that there are common blocks that women specifically, but it could be men too, are carrying into sex and intimacy in midlife?
Shame. I mean, shame is kind of the thing
Ooh.
across the board and it shifts as you get older. And so it can be, I mean, looking at one of the simplest examples of if a person with a penis or a man can't keep his dick hard. If it's not getting hard when
Yeah.
he wants to, if it's not staying hard, if it's not performing in the way that he's used to, people with penises have had a very specific script of reliability of XYZ, 1, 2, 3, ABC. This has been since they were 11 years old, 12 years old,
Yes.
13 years old, right?
It's
But now we
identity. It's part of their
exactly.
identity.
Yeah, and for men specifically, they didn't have the I mean, for women too, but, like, for men specifically, they tie everything to a hard penis and ejaculation. All of us do because that's
Yes.
how all of us were taught, but women have different bodies, and so they understand different forms of touch are accessible, and you don't necessarily need to be touched on your vulva to have all these great experiences. People who are socially raised as men and who have penises, and that's the body that they've been living in, and the society and the culture that they've been living in, have not really explored the other aspects of their body. So for them, when we're looking at midlife and the changes that happen and some of the blocks that can come in the way, when that erection and ejaculation stops becoming predictable, that really gets in people's head. There's shame, there's guilt, there's ego, there are all these toxic messages that are in their heads. But the reality is, your body and your pleasure is so much more than a hard penis. So, when we can get past the shame of it and we can understand that that is a lot of bullshit that was fed to you,
Right.
now we can get to a place of, um, pleasure and exploration and curiosity and joy and pleasure and all of these things. And so that's one of the easiest and probably most well known examples of how these things can get in our way.
And I think the same is true for, women and getting wet, like, it's
100%.
it has I mean, I used to be embarrassed, and now I'm like, "Come on, girl, like, could we just get a little help
Yeah.
here?"
Yeah. Put some more lube
And
on it.
yeah, and I never thought about that, and you're right that, like, there are moments when there has been shame. It's like, "No,
Yeah.
I actually am desiring this, and I'm gonna need some help today, and I don't wanna feel ashamed about that. I want
Yeah.
to feel supported, that there are things that can support me in my desire." And so it is such an interesting time and place for us because, yeah, the body, because sometimes it feels like the body's betraying us, and
Yes.
really coming to terms with compassion and recognition of the shift and honoring rather than shaming, I think is such a big part of this.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So yeah, there's so many things I wanna talk about, but, like, conversation starters. So, you've talked about, like, taking, like, intimacy meetings. What's one way that someone, whoever maybe perhaps the braver person in the relationship is for their first intimacy meeting, what are some conversation starters?
I think it's always great to start with gratitude. Just
Ooh, I love
start listing off the things that you are really grateful for. And it cannot be, I'm grateful that you hold my hand. No, I'm grateful that you hold my hand when we're doing XYZ because it makes me feel blank. When we
Ooh,
really get descriptive and go layer, 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 layer down, that's when we can actually feel the weight of that gratitude and what that actually is. So,
the
starting off with
specificity.
specificity and like dig a little deeper. Keep saying because blank, because
Okay.
blank. Just keep going deeper and see where it leads to. And that's a really fun exercise. But starting things off with gratitude really does create intimacy and connection, and it helps people feel seen because we're often not really giving each other gratitude. We're usually giving each other gripes,
Yes, in our
especially in a long term
day-to-day.
relationship. We're giving each other gripes.
Yes.
This is not here
So,
for the gripes.
I love that, and I think, like, so if this is, like, the first time with an intimacy meeting, is it okay to write stuff down ahead of time so you're a little
Yeah.
prepared? Okay.
100%. I am very pro write it down. If you
Yes.
need to I mean, listen, when I was younger, this was like, my college boyfriend, post-college boyfriend, I was so anti-confrontation, like, I just could not have conversations. So what we would do, which actually wound up being a very useful tool, is we would write letters to each other, exchange the letters, and have a conversation. That wound up being
Ooh,
such a great tool for 2 people who were just like, we don't want to have this conversation, but there are things that we need to say. I mean, we were in our early 20s, so we really didn't have many tools in our tool belt, but I instinctively knew if we
it's a
write if
great
I can write
tool.
this down and I can give this
Yes.
to you and then we can have this conversation because it's too much for me to try to get out. I and still sometimes that's a great tool to use. Like write it down, write it in your notes. It helps you organize your thoughts, it helps you get things out, it helps you process so then when you do have the conversation, you actually know what you need to say and what you don't need to say. Because I'll tell
Yes.
you, there's a lot of things you don't need to say that you cannot take back. So
Yes, and
write it in
blurting
your
them
notes.
out, not the best move.
No. When you have a difficult conversation coming up, I highly encourage writing it down, journal, bullet points, whatever you need to do, but organize your thoughts a little bit because your feelings are going to get in the way and your nervous system
Yes.
is going to take over. You can use all the tools in the world, but you are in an activated situation. And so your brain is not going to be functioning at its critical level. It's going to be functioning at its primal level, at the amygdala
Okay.
is what's going to be activated when we are in these situations. We can try to temper it as much as possible, but that's what's going on in your brain. Your cognitive brain is going to be like, "Oop, I'm gonna take a little time out. I'm gonna sip some tea," while amygdala just like goes off with their bad self. We don't want that to happen. So going into
No.
these conversations when you have something to like talk about, and this works with gratitude as well. Like that's really good
Yeah.
too. It's not just about the things that we want to be working on. Go into it prepared. The best
Okay.
productions are only good because we are prepared. Great prep
Yes.
equals excellent production. So put the time in for all of this, whether you're going to have a conversation, a date, a scene, go to a party, plan something, put the time in to plan it properly so then you can actually execute what it is that you intend to execute and you can pivot when something shifts and changes and goes wrong because inevitably some shit's going
Mm.
to go wrong and you need
Yes.
to be prepared to pivot. So when we do all that prep work, you can pivot and it's smooth and your nervous system is going to feel safer because it's not trying to organize all of these things at once.
I love that advice. So I'm thinking back to my husband and I, we met at a bar. We had 3, 4 really great dates, and then I went on a month-long trip to Montana, where I'm from, that I'd already planned, and I was like, "I'm never gonna see that guy again," and I was like, "Wait a minute, I really like him." So, like, I pitched this idea to him of, "While I'm away, let's play 20 questions, but you can't ask a question you wouldn't be willing to answer." And so
Yes.
this was over email, it wasn't even text back then. And we did it over email for a month, and I feel like even like, this conversation is I haven't thought about this in years, but this conversation is making me realize that that really set the scene for us to be confident and comfortable communicators. We really got to know each other, like, basically, when I came back from that trip, I basically moved in, like, we were all in.
Yeah.
And and it really set the scene and the groundwork for open communication, having hard conversations, being willing to say the really tough stuff in a fair, compassionate way, and not when you're feeling supercharged. Like, that's one thing we always agree on is let's be fair
Yeah.
about this. So if we haven't had those tools, you've given us so many things to, like, think about in terms of, like, prepping for conversations, and that really sets us up for success. So I'd love to next explore women, whether so we're midlife, we might be single, we might be divorced, we might be widowed, we might not have been sexually active for a while in midlife. How can we reconnect and explore, like, what's one practical tip, if possible, to explore desire and even explore, like, our sensual identity, without a partner or with a partner, just a way to reconnect. Like, I love what you talked about before with slowing down and setting a scene, but, like, what's a next practical tool or tip?
I really love a yes, no, maybe list.
Ooh,
I have one, it's part of a program as well, but I love a yes, no, maybe list because it just lists out a whole bunch of different things. So if
okay.
you've already done the work to like set the scene, you've got your pleasure practice, you're like starting to like understand your brakes and your accelerators, now you're ready to get into the practical things of what specific acts do I like, do I not like, and am I curious about? So yes, no, maybe list is literally just a whole list of different things and different acts. The way that I've organized mine is I start off with things that you can do that do not lead to sex. So,
Okay.
very intentionally, I would like to do these things like take a shower together, hang out naked. I would like to do these things, but I don't want them to lead to sex. I just want them to be a thing that we do, and sex will be off the table. That is a very, very powerful tool, especially when people are struggling with arousal and orgasm and erections
Yes.
and ejaculation and all these things. Like taking sex off the table is an excellent tool. So the first page is everything that you can do, or just a whole bunch of ideas of things that you can do without it leading to sex. And it may be that you're like, yeah, I would love to take a shower with you, but I'm not comfortable with putting that boundary on a shower. Great. That means it's a no for you. Fine. The
Okay.
next page is the exact same page, but it can lead to sex. So, and for some people it might be I would like to read erotic novels with you, but I don't want that to
Yes.
lead to sex. I want that to stay a boundary where it cannot lead to sex. So that's why I have that as two separate pages. I think that's really important. And then I go through all of the different positions. There's some kinky things in there. There's all sorts of different. There's also a page that's about sex toys. So, and you can get many of these or a lot of them available. So you can go through this list and say, yes, I definitely want that. No, I definitely do not want that. And maybe, which just means I don't want that right now, but I would like to have more information. And once you have more
Okay.
information, then you can determine if it's a yes or it's a no. But that's a great way to start to understand what you want to try, what you already like, what you are like,
Yes.
absolutely not. Once you're at that point, and a lot of these things you can do by yourself, a lot of these
Yeah,
things you can do with a partner, and a lot of these things will be like, I can do this by myself now. And when I have a partner, this is something that I would like to explore.
that's great. I love that. It gives us such practical I just always feel like it's helpful to, like, have an activity
I love an
or
activity.
yeah, I do
Yeah.
too.
Every lesson comes with an activity because it's my lessons are like, I don't know, like 5, 8 minutes long or something like that, just to like get the core principles. And
yes.
then it's like, here's your activity sheet. Go do the thing. Like
Yep.
I'm
I love a
not,
workbook.
I love a workbook. Yeah. I don't want to, like I don't like to sit in a fucking class for a half an hour. And if you're trying to have better sex, like you don't want to listen to me talk for fucking an hour or half an hour. Like watch my show. If you want to hear me yap, watch my show. But you don't want to do that. Like I need to communicate certain things to you. But then it's all about like actually going out there and doing exercises because that's how we
Yes,
learn.
getting
Like we need
practical.
yeah, we need the information. We need to have the foundation to understand what it is we're doing and why we're doing it and like that practical stuff. But then you need to actually experience something. So for anyone listening to your question is like listen to this show, read the books, do all the things, but you have to get out there and start doing things. You cannot
Yes.
rely on your brain at all for things that are inherently connected to your body. You got to have
Oh,
both.
so well said. And so it feels like there's a couple pieces here. One is permission to
Yeah.
explore, giving
Yeah.
yourself permission, and then putting it in practice.
Yeah.
I think that's really going to be two great steps for folks in midlife who are wanting to either spice it up or just discover it I also feel like, especially if you've been in a long-term relationship or actually this could be true for a new partnership too, we have gotten so comfortable with what routine has been like in the past,
Oh,
and
your
so
sexual script, yes.
redefining what sensuality, pleasure, sex can look and feel like in midlife, it's such a great time to reinvent, to re-explore, to do the yes, no, maybe, and see what might be different in midlife for you.
Absolutely, and that sexual script, I mean, we cover that as well because it's like, you gotta have a good script to have a good movie, and you don't wanna be repeating the thing, so we all have those XYZ steps. You touch a butt, then you make out, then maybe a boob gets touched, then there's a hand here, then there's a hand there, maybe a mouth goes there, and boom, now
Oh,
if
sounds
it's
like a
in a
good
tight
time.
couple. You know what I'm saying? Like, we do the same fucking thing every single time. Mix it up, switch it around. But in order for
Yes.
you to do that, you have to understand what your sexual script is. So a part of this is also like, what is your sexual script? Think about the last 3 times that you had sex. What happened before? What initiated? Who
Mm,
initiated? What was the first thing you did? What was the second thing you did? How did the clothes come off? Where did you have sex? What were the positions? How did you get out? Like all literally breaking down your scene, your actual scenes. The last 3 times you had sex.
okay.
What actually happened? And now we can start to see the patterns in that script and whether you like them or not. So that's,
Right, and
like,
if you wanna
yeah,
rewrite the script, I love
exactly.
that idea.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah. I'm
okay.
very practical.
No, I love how practical it is. Practical is the name of the game for
It's the
sure.
word, like, yeah.
Yeah. So you're also a pole dancer and teach sensual artistic expression. So I'm curious, everyone I know who has done pole dancing has really spoken about the confidence it gives them, the agency it gives them. So I'm curious about what pole dancing has taught you about your own body, your own sensuality, as well as how it's informed how you teach others.
Yeah. I think I came to pole dancing where like I already knew that that was my form of movement and
Okay.
I loved it. I think for me I'm just like not an athlete. So that was if anything like, I built more strength doing that. But I will say the funny thing that happens in pole dancing, this totally happened with me. Your shorts start to get smaller and smaller. So for me, the thing was like, oh, I can't show my butt on the internet. And then, couple years later, you're like in a thong and who fucking cares? Like it's a body, get over it. So,
Okay.
And it was
I
never
love that.
yeah, and it was never, an in-person thing, like, I don't care in person, like, I'll be naked all the time, that doesn't matter to me, it was more of, like, posting something, and that is tied to working in production and being a woman in production and having to consistently desexualize ourselves and, not whatever, all the things that women have to do that they should not ever have to do. Um,
Right.
it really helped me release all of those things, and again, maybe that's led to me not getting on certain jobs, but, like, yuck. You're not a
Yeah,
person that I would
good.
want. You're probably really not a safe person if you're not hiring me because you see me expressing my art. So that's,
Yes.
like it will weed people out of your life and that's a good thing. Don't ever take that as a bad thing. Even if it's painful, it will weed out the people in your life who do not deserve to be there and who are not safe enough to be there. Because if
Mm,
someone does not accept the fact that you are expressing yourself in XYZ way, that is tied to their own shame, their own messages,
stories.
their own stories, like, that has nothing
Yes.
to do with you, and people will show you whether or not they are dangerous for them to be in your life and whether or not they deserve to be there, so, I know that that's hard, and sometimes that can be your family, but
Yeah.
you need to do what you need to do to protect yourself, to create boundaries, and to live in a way that makes you feel alive. That does not mean that you need to cut everybody off, but it does mean that you can have boundaries around your relationships and who gets access to what.
I think that's so important for midlife anyway, like, really taking a look at your circle, and I
Yeah.
feel like pandemic and post-pandemic, people have given themselves a lot more permission to be estranged from their families. I have a lot of thoughts about that because that has happened in my own family, and, I have a lot of thoughts about that. However, I do think midlife is a good time to assess who is in your life and who's
Mhm.
lifting you up, who might need to just be kicked to the curb or
Yeah.
pushed a little farther out of the circle because they're just not available for what you have going on. They're not supportive of it. They can't champion you or vice versa.
Yeah.
Midlife is a great time to do a reassessment on that in general.
Yeah, it's about those reciprocal relationships, and if a relationship is not reciprocated and it doesn't feel supported, especially if you are supporting them, then why? Why are you in
Yeah.
it? Everything is a choice, including your family. Blood does
Yes.
not require a relationship. It just means that your DNA is connected, but you do not need to be in a relationship, let alone an intimate relationship with people who are related to you by blood if that is not what's actually good and healthy for you.
Yeah.
There's a
And
lot of,
that
like,
can,
toxic cutting people off too, like, I wanna be clear that a lot of
yes.
people are just not able to, like, have conversations and repair and heal, but there are a lot of situations where people are also hanging on to relationships that you don't need to, and the only reason you're hanging on is because they're your family, and that's not enough of a
Yeah.
reason.
I
It's
think
just not.
that's where discernment comes in because like I said earlier in this conversation, the emotional shrapnel of zero fucks can be really lethal. So I think
Yeah.
it's important to mind our side of the street when it comes to that. Final question for you, and this has been an amazing conversation. We could talk for hours.
Yes.
Well actually I have two questions. So the first one is for anyone listening who thinks wherever they are, whether they're in midlife, younger, older, and they think I missed my window, I'm too old, too awkward, too disconnected, too far gone to have the sex life or the pleasure that I want in my life. What do you want that person to know?
I want them to look at retirement centers, 'kay? They be fucking.
Right? Oh my god, they spread STDs like wildfire.
Exactly. You are not dead. Until you are dead, nothing is too late. So get over yourself. You're not dead. You can do what you want to do. Your body may work differently. You may need
Yeah.
different tools. You may have different access points. Pleasure may look different, but you're not dead. People who are debilitated from their neck down, people who do not have any feeling from the neck down, still find ways to experience pleasure. So if
Yes.
if somebody who cannot even feel the majority of their body can find ways to experience pleasure and their own version of orgasm, what the fuck are you talking about?
Mm.
You're just getting in your way. So this is some tough love. Get out of your way, get over yourself, and recognize that your body is different and you just need to learn what that looks like now. but you're not dead.
Yes,
So
and
stop pretending like you are.
I love that, connection to so, like, Christopher Reeve had this beautiful quote, and I'm gonna butcher it, but it was something like, "I have no patience for able-bodied people who get in their own way," or something like that, and it was
Yeah.
after, obviously, he had been paralyzed, and I've always thought about that because, like, no matter what it is that we're going through, if we are fortunate enough to be able-bodied, there really are no excuses, and we can just look at folks who have physical limitations and are
Yeah.
receiving pleasure, experiencing pleasure, doing amazing things in the world, and remind ourselves that the only limits we put on ourselves are self-imposed.
Absolutely. I mean, I watched my friend go through MS and
Oh,
it was
yeah, that's a
horrific.
tough one.
And yeah, it was horrible. And, she did die a couple of years ago now.
I'm
But,
sorry.
thank you. But she couldn't find pleasure. That was a situation where her day to day was so excruciatingly unbearable. That is a much different situation than you just turned 45 or you're
Yeah,
52. So again,
yeah,
get the fuck over yourself and figure it out because you are
good
not dead.
reminder.
We it is so easy for us to take advantage of the fact that we have functioning bodies just because it works differently. And yes, I understand depression and anxiety and all of these things. And pleasure doesn't mean that you're having these extraordinary orgasms. Pleasure means something that feels good and it is not
Yes.
explicitly sexual. So, what do you need to make something feel 1% better? I've been listening to Yacht Rock for like the last week, and let me tell you, my life has improved. It's so
Yacht rock
stupid.
is the
But I'm like,
best.
yes, but I went like this morning, I used to just like wake up and I'll put on a podcast or whatever because I just like to have voices around, I guess. And the last few days or like the last week that I started listening to Yacht Rock, which was like kind of a joke, I was like, let me actually just see what, like, I think I like Yacht Rock. Let me put on the playlist. Have not been able to turn it off since, but I would wake up and I'm like, going, it puts you in a mood. And I would like put on a podcast and then I'm like, nah, we're not doing this. We need some
No.
yacht rock. And then the shit gets turned around. So when we are talking about pleasure and when we're talking about shifting something, that's what we're talking about. Put on some fucking yacht rock. I'm kidding. If that's your thing, put it on. But
Whatever
truly,
works for you. Yacht
it
rock
will
is
make
one of
you
my
feel good.
faves.
But the point is, how can you make XYZ 1% better? How can you make your sex 1% better? How can you make what you're wearing feel 1% better? How can you make your throat feel 1% better? How can you make your brain feel 1% better? It's about those 1% shifts, not climbing a mountain. So, unless
Yes.
you are fucking dead, unless you are in debilitating pain all day, every day, and even at that, she found ways to make it one. I mean, she would smoke so much weed, it was a whole fucking forest, but that's what she needed to do to
Yeah.
feel even just she could barely feel any better at all, but that's what she had to do to feel better. So she didn't give a shit if she was the highest person on the planet. If that's what she needed to do to get through the next
Absolutely.
day or hour or minute, it's what she fucking did because that's what was available to her. So it's about what is available to you and doing that versus sitting in this place of, I'm too old. I can't do that. No, you are old because you are telling yourself that you're old.
Right. I love that. So true and well said. Thank you for that. Now, my final question is, this has been so good. Where can people find out more about you?
You can find my show at Birds and Bees Don't Fuck Without the U because censorship is real. That is everywhere. My main Instagram account is just my name, Arielle Zadok. Good luck spelling that. And if you do want to check out Fuck Like the Movies, you can go to rubyisland.media/course. I don't really sell it very hard, but it's fucking excellent. So I probably should. But it's, if you do want those tools, it's there. It's accessible. It's all DIY. But that's where you can find me. So follow along.
I love it. And I encourage everyone to do so. This conversation has inspired me. I'm so grateful for this time together. Thank you. And for everyone who's listened, let us know what resonates. And to be continued, this conversation about midlife does not end. We do not discriminate by age or any other bias. So you can be 12, 20, 70, 80, and you can still enjoy Welcome to Midlife conversations because we're all searching for meaning in the middle. So thank you, everyone, for listening. And until next time, welcome to midlife.